Okay, hey guys. So I have actually not done a lot of prep for this. Uh, so I'm also supposed to give a tech talk in a few weeks. So this is going to be half demo, half tech talk, just because that's what I have. And thanks to Max for showing off some of the cool things that you can do with sandboxes. I work on sandboxes at Cloudflare, and uh, to start off, frankly, I'm actually a big fan of pixel art, which is the reason why that's my wallpaper all the time. And so I made this little goose thing, and I wanted to just say, you know, make the goose follow my cursor. This was very fascinating for my niece. So this was a very fun project to build. But basically, what's happening, and this is all on production, but in under 20 seconds, there's a new instance that has come up. Dev server started preview URL that's actually on the browser. The agent has read the code, it's reading, and yeah, so basically that works. It's really silly, really fun, and I've actually tried doing a little scary things. I asked it to turn the goose green, and it did. I asked it to remove the hands, and it did, and it got really freaky. So after that, I stopped. But what I would like to do is, actually very quickly go through. Oh, by the way, the other thing that I'm actually very popular at Cloudflare for some reason is my slide creation skills, because I have been vibe coding slides. All of these slides are actually React apps, and if anyone like me feels like they are really bad at making slides, ask Claude to write React, and it actually does a almost good job. Uh, so the preview URL that we just saw, it's a computer. My job at Cloudflare is to figure out, okay, how to design that computer, right? So what are the different layers? There's a micro VM. Inside that, there's a container. Inside that, there's a bash session. There's networking that needs to be solved for, and then persistence. How do you save the files, packages, states, everything that if a sandbox session starts and the agent does some work, ideally, even if it comes back a day after that, it should be able to continue from there. So these are all the different layers that we need to solve for. Um, I have four different sections, but I actually want to, spend the demo focusing on this one because there is something cool here. So when it comes to what an agent needs as a runtime, when it's using a sandbox, ideally we want to say, well, it should have access to all the same tools like GitHub CLI that developers actually need. But of course, if your sandbox does not do a lot of non-trivial things, your agent has to do it, and that kind of sucks. So the table stakes is all this, right? Your agent should be able to run commands, read files, Git repos, blah, 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 simple things. But it should also be able to do more complex things. So the sandbox should allow you to start background processes, manage them, stream logs in real time. You should be able to manage a persistent bash session the way that you and I, when we are actually using a terminal, we have a bash session. Similarly, agents should be able to manage a bash session, and you should be able to attach a terminal. And I'm hoping, even in the TL demo, it was a terminal API. Yes. So you should actually just be able to attach a terminal window that actually looks into a sandbox instance, and finally code interpreter. We'll not deal with that. So I want to take a moment to actually shift gears and talk about this terminal um, feature in a bit because I think it's very cool. So in order to build this terminal feature, sorry, I'm going to show you some bash. I know it's not the nicest thing to do, but what we had to do at Cloudflare, or whatever, with the Sandbox SDK, is to say, okay, we are going to manage bash processes, but we will I don't know how deep to go into this, but basically we want to make sure that the agents are running things, but we are able to give a TypeScript API on top. We had to write some gnarly bash. Uh, but what I actually did this week, which I'm actually very proud of, and that's what I'm actually going to segue into, is this little blank screen. So if you think about it, when you and I are using the terminal, we are actually, just typing stuff. And when we type stuff, it's just, so for the terminal, it's just individual characters that are actually going in. But we also want to give access to the same terminal to an agent as well. And my personal goal is for fairies and us to actually get access to the same terminal. So that's what this does. I created this demo half an hour before I got here, and so I'm going to say hi. What's going to happen is that there's an agent behind the scenes that's going to roast my prompts, roast whatever I'm going to type into the terminal. So as you can imagine, hi is not a valid command, and I have an agent roasting it. But what's actually happening here is that both the agent and you as a human are actually able to interact with the same terminal instance while still being able to programmatically manage all of it. This took me 10 days to build, but so for that reason, I actually want to say I am trying, and it's just going to roast me more. And this is actually my second half of the demo. But yeah, so essentially, what we now have with the Sandbox SDK is also, oh my God, my API keys. I'm going to delete all of them. uh, okay. So that's actually the latest thing that we've actually done with the terminal API. So in terms of other things that you could actually find interesting about building sandboxes as well as using them, uh, the nice thing about agents is ideally you want to give it a lot of power, right? So you want to basically let it free and just be able to do whatever it wants, because the more the more you try to restrict it, the less it's able to do. But you also don't want to just completely mess things up. So the way to do that is isolation. Right now, I think the common way to do it is you actually put everything into a micro VM. Inside the VM, there's a container, and these are all the things that you don't know when you are actually giving access to a sandbox to an agent. You don't know what packages it wants to install. How did it get there? Why did it do it? Blah, 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 blah. So, you use a micro VM. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it's not that interesting. The thing that I actually, sorry, it's almost good at making slides. The thing that I actually do want to show, yeah, is basically how simple the API gets once you actually solve a lot of these problems for agents, right? So first and foremost, in order to get an isolated sandbox, basically it gets reduced to a single line of code. You say, get sandbox with a unique ID. You get a sandbox that's spun up very close to your users, and you can actually do whatever you want with it. Even the runtime. So for instance, so like I said, in order to start a background process, you get a single method, and with that method, you also can say, okay, wait for this port to get ready, or wait for this service to get ready. And there are different ways in which you can wait for a process programmatically, and this is the reason why we had to write really horrible looking bash, so that we could actually parse when exactly the command actually completes, when it's reaching different sorts of states, when it's actually printing a different log. There's all sorts of things that you can do. And all of this is actually happening over the network. So that gets solved for. Networking is actually a really interesting one. So the nice thing about this is that this single line gives you back a URL, the same URL that I actually that we saw at the starting. And what this essentially does is two things. One, the moment our whole network it sees that URL, it is able to go to a very specific sandbox instance. So this is where things get different from running things on, I don't know, like AWS EC2 yourself. There you're managing a cluster of instances, but it's not necessarily, this container is doing this thing. But we have the ability to uniquely address every single container on our network using an ID. And once we are able to do that, that means that we can give you a URL, And even if you start a particular process inside the sandbox, we are able to route that URL all the way back to that sandbox instance and that process. Persistence, you can store stuff in R2. Durable objects, I think Cloudflare's most popular question is, what the heck is a durable object? It's workers are serverless, serverless instances, durable objects add state to it. That's the simplest way I find being able to explain it. But the other benefit with durable objects is that they are globally uniquely addressable. So the moment we actually put a durable object in front of every container and a sandbox, we get global addressability. Blah 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 blah. This is me. Yeah, that's actually me. Sorry, I don't have much of a demo, but I figured I'll actually very quickly show these two things. Thank you.